You are now listening to the Beaver Train Podcast. All aboard! Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Beaver Train Podcast, the podcast where we learn more about the beavers of BVU. My guest today is a world traveler, author, and professor here at BVU. She's won many awards, including the Wythe Award for Excellence in Teaching, is a co-author of her newest psychology book, and is gracing us with her presence today. I would like to welcome Dr. Goodfriend to the podcast today. Dr. Goodfriend, welcome aboard the Beaver Train.
Thank you for having me so much.
Oh, it's an honor to have you here today. We've had quite the experience together with our social psychology class last semester, I believe.
Yeah, the first time I ever got to teach that class.
Yeah.
And it's my area of expertise, so I was super excited, and I thought the students I had were fantastic, so that's partially due to you, and thank you for going on that journey with me.
Exactly. It was really fun. It was actually, because I had taken a psychology class in high school, and my teacher there was just ecstatically fun. And then coming into this one, I was like, let's give it a try, and it was really fun. I really enjoyed it.
Good.
But so we're here kind of discussing your journey into BVU. As maybe some know, you actually got your bachelor's here at BVU.
I sure did.
And then you moved out to Purdue University to gain your master's and your doctorate degree. So talk to me a little bit about your trip back to BVU. What made you come back to teach at BVU?
When I came here to go to college, I was a double major in psychology and theater, and I chose BVU because I wanted that small environment where the teachers really would get to know me, they would mentor me over my time here, and I knew that I would have more opportunity at BVU because it's a smaller school. And what I mean by that is that if there's a cool internship coming up, if there's a great role in the play, I have a higher likelihood of getting to have those opportunities because the professors know me, because there's not going to be as much competition. Just statistically speaking, there aren't going to be as many students who go after those opportunities. And so I knew that college is basically what you make of it, and I wanted to go to a place where I would have that kind of opportunity. So my time at BVU as a student was absolutely fantastic. I had a great time. I loved my professors. I loved my fellow students. And so I left BV and successfully got my doctorate at Purdue, as you already mentioned. And when I left graduate school, I had to get a job as a professor. I'm not really qualified to do anything else. And so I applied for 60 jobs. I got 50 interviews. And the first job that made me an offer was Boise State in Idaho. And I didn't know what else was going to come my way. This was a great offer. I wanted to live in a bigger place and try something new. So I was there for 2 years. And there were some parts of it that I liked very much and other parts that I did not. And it was at that time, 2 years into that job, that one of the psychology professors I had as a student was retiring. So they actually invited me out to be the very first ever Scholars Day keynote speaker that year that she was retiring. And or the year before she was going to retire. And so they brought me out and they sort of reminded me of all the things I loved about BVU. And then as I was leaving to go to the airport to fly home, they said, by the way, we're going to have a job opening next year and we would love it if you would apply. And it surprised me, but I was certainly very honored and privileged that they would think of me. And so I thought about that for quite a bit, and I thought, well, it doesn't hurt to apply. So I did that, and they made me the offer, and I knew that it would be like coming home, and that I would really feel that this is my place, and that is how I feel.
Wow, that's awesome. I never knew you were at Boise State. That's quite interesting.
Yeah, they've got the blue AstroTurf.
I know, the first time I saw that as when I was growing up, and I'm like, there's a blue field? I never knew that was legal, but yeah.
Oh, it's not anymore. So they call that the Smurf turf. And
Smurf turf.
Boise State was one of the first colleges to change their AstroTurf from any color other than green. And as soon as they did it, they started winning every game. And the other team said, well, it's not fair. It throws us off. We can't keep track where the ball is. And so after that, they changed it so you're not allowed to do that anymore.
Really?
But Boise State got grandfathered in.
Okay, so because I knew that there was, and I didn't know that they had outlawed it at that point because they kept winning. That's funny.
Yeah, they do keep winning, and so it's possible that if you're not used to seeing that football go across the blue, you'll lose track of it.
That's true, but the Smurf turf,
yeah.
that's. I've heard things before. That's funny. That's a part I think you could never get outside of Boise State. I like that. So you've gone into your studies as now. What's your technical doctorate in? Is it psychology?
It is in social psychology specifically.
So what kind of drew you in your bachelor study to become a social psychologist as a doctor?
When I was a young child, I showed symptoms of Tourette's syndrome, obsessive compulsive disorder, and autism spectrum disorder, which it wasn't called that at the time, but just autism. I used to make squeaking noises. I used to rock back and forth in my chair. I used to do self-injurious behaviors, like poking sharp needles into my fingertips. But also, I was very, very socially awkward. I had no friends. I was the weird, smelly kid with the crazy hair and the homemade clothes. And I just didn't have any friends at all. So that was hard for me. And when I realized in high school, when I took a introduction to psychology class, I realized, wow, there's a whole field of people who study humans and what it's like to be human. And social psychology specifically is about human social interaction, both the good and the bad. And so that was when I was inspired to spend the rest of my life studying psychology, because I was trying to fix myself.
That's interesting. So you had that whole life situation, and you're like, well, why not study it for the rest of my life,
Right.
And that's led you to a whole gamut of success, and of course, the recent success is you co-authored a book aptly titled Social Psychology,
Right.
and you of course use it in your classroom. How was that experience of writing a book with? Was it Tom?
Tom is my co-author. Yeah, that was I'd always been interested in writing books, or writing a book, because when I was an isolated child and I didn't have any friends to distract me, I had a lot of time on my hands, and so I was an avid reader. I especially liked sci-fi fantasy types of things, because I could imagine that I was from some other world, and that's why I didn't fit into this one. But I always wanted to write a book, and I didn't really know how to even do that. So after I had been here at BV for a couple of years, I got an email from this guy named Tom Hynes. I have never met this guy, never talked to him at a conference. I've never even read his research, because it's a different area of psychology than I am in. And it said, "Hi, I'm writing a social psychology book. Do you want to be my co-author? Give me a call." And I thought, this is like some kind of scam or something. He's going to ask me for my bank account number.
Right.
I had no idea. So, I spent some time Googling him and finding him on Facebook. He really is a guy. He's
real.
He really is a psychologist. He had already written a very successful psychology statistics book. So I didn't really know what to do at that point. I was very hesitant. Partially because this is kind of a lifelong commitment. If you write a textbook, you've got multiple editions. What if we don't get along? What if he's just mean to me? I don't know. Yeah. So I have a lot of these hesitancies, as my childhood taught me. So I called him up, and right off the bat, I could tell that Tom was this very nurturing, sweet, genuinely good person. He had 4 daughters. He still has 4 daughters. Wow. He's married to a lovely woman who's a nurse. And he said, I started writing this book a couple of years ago, and I've actually got it about 2/3 of the way done. I want a co-author who is a young feminist author who has experience writing for a general audience. Because so many textbooks are technical and boring, and you don't enjoy reading them. Yep. He said, I wanted this to be a book that's really engaging and accessible and applicable to students, and that they actually want to read. That was our goal. And I said, that sounds pretty good. How did you find me? I've never talked to you. I'm not particularly famous or anything. And he said, well, I went to a conference and I asked 10 of my friends, can you tell me the name of a young feminist psychologist who has experience writing for a general audience? And he said 6 of those people said my name.
Wow.
And that was mostly because I have written several pop culture and psychology book chapters. So Game of Thrones, Star Trek, superheroes. And so that's kind of how I got my name out there. And so he sort of talked me into it.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely the best thing that has happened to me in terms of my professional career, in terms of my products, because working with Tom, he was a mentor to me. He's always been extremely supportive. He taught me how to negotiate with publishing companies and all the steps to that process. And I'm happy to say that it's been a pretty successful book. We actually just won an award for the book.
Yeah.
It's the most promising new textbook in the social sciences. That's the name of the award.
Well, congratulations on that one.
It's called a Texty.
Ooh, a Texty.
Yeah, I've got a Texty.
Is it like a little golden book or what is it?
I'm actually getting some kind of award. I don't know if it's a plaque or a certificate, or I hope it's like a little golden book or something. So there's an event in Philadelphia where they have a dinner and they present us with these awards. So I'm going to that in June.
Snazzy. There you go.
Show off my Texty.
Right? Your Texty. I love it. And I can be a testament to that. I mean, reading the book and throughout the different chapters that there is, I mean, it is engaging material, and it's not dumbed down to the point of like someone who's in elementary school can read it, but it's engaging for a college student to want to be interested in reading the next chapter. I mean, whenever we did stuff in class, I know I was really engaged in material and what I mean, social psychology is such a different. It's not really a different field from psychology, but there are differences, and the book does a really great job of showing those differences and how it applies to society and social life and everything. So I can be a testament to that kind of knowledge. So
thank you.
What was the in talking about the journey of how creating a book and you never knew how? What was the most difficult part? Was it like the publishing part? What was the most difficult aspect of that?
I think it's the fact that deadlines are set and not up to me really. So the publisher wants it to be out at a certain day because that's the season when professors are choosing what book they're going to use in the following year. So if you are past that day, then you won't get as many sales. And so then you work backward from that. So you have to look at the page proofs and make sure that everything looks right. You have to approve the photographs. And I actually mentioned this in class as something that delayed us was the first time they sent me the page proofs with the photographs that they wanted to use, I rejected them because it was just a bunch of white people. And I said, this is social psychology, and it's also the reality of 2018 when at the time, we need to be a little bit more diverse in the images that we're showing here. So I wanted to see people of color. I wanted to see people in wheelchairs. I wanted to see people over the age of 21. Let's show that social psychology goes beyond white college students, basically.
Right.
So there were those kinds of delays. The fact that it was both Tom and me working on the chapters. He maybe was busy in a week that I wasn't busy, and so we had to kind of accommodate each other's schedules. So I think most of the time when you're sort of an academic and you're working on a project, you're pretty independent, and you can work at 3 a.m. if you want, or on the weekend or whatever. But this is really a collaborative project, and so that just took some adjusting for me. But it was fantastic.
Yeah, and you got most you talking about the changes that you made. So you had more of a say. Like if the publishers say we're going to do this, but you're like let's try this. So they were a lot more accommodating in that aspect than you thought.
They were actually. That's one of the reasons that I chose that Tom and I chose this particular company, Sage, is because they are known for working with authors and for being reasonable about making sure that their authors are taken care of, and that's not the case with every textbook company. A lot of them are really cutthroat, just out to make a buck, and that was not our intention.
Good. Oh, that's really good to hear because a lot of them I think go to like McGraw-Hill or whatever it's called, and just
Cengage and Pearson are the bad boys of the publishing world.
The bad boys. I love it. But so and it's one of the most interesting things that you used your own textbook that you wrote in your class. So what was kind of was it just the aspect of like, I wrote this, here's my word, or like what was the inspiration behind using your book in your own classroom?
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting question because a couple faculty have told me that was a conflict of interest, that I shouldn't use my own book because I'm profiting on my own students, basically. So I see that point, but I also really know that book. I know every word in that book. I know that book better than other social psychology books, and the voice of that book is my voice. So when I'm explaining things in class, it matches the book. So I think it's actually helping the students. I mean, clearly I'm biased in my opinion. It's the best book in the world. But what we've done to kind of assuage any conflict of interest fears is that Tom and I are now writing another book together, an introduction to psychology book, and we are giving a portion of our own royalties, not the book profits, but the profits that would be going into our pocket. We're giving about 20% of that to charity.
Wow.
And my hope is that when a professor chooses to use the book, what I would like for the company to do is to say 20% of the royalties are going to a charity, and I've chosen 5 charities. Tom and I have chosen 5 charities that we like, and then the professor can choose which of those 5 charities he or she wants that money to go toward, so that they're feeling a little bit empowered, and they know the money is going to charity. So it's things like the American Humane Society, because I like puppies, and also there are organizations to help people of color go to college, scholarships. I'm giving some of the money to prevention of domestic violence, which is my area of research. And then Tom chose a local charity that's out in New Jersey that I'm not really familiar with. So we're hoping to kind of give back a little bit with the sales of the second book.
Well, I mean, and then it just kind of, I don't want to say stick it to BB, but it's like, look, I'm doing something good at least, you know? Well, because I'll be honest, when I came into the class and we were and you're like, I wrote this book, and then I'm like, well, then why am I paying for it? I'll be honest with you. I was thinking that, I'm like, that's kind of weird, but okay. And I still have it. You know, I'll probably will keep it, because there'll probably be something like, I know something, but I got to look back to it. So it's I still have the book. I haven't sold it yet. So
thanks.
But yeah,
you actually bought the wrong book, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah, I remember that.
I bought the wrong book because it was the paperback cover, and it didn't have all the pages.
Right.
And I'm sitting here like, what is she making me do?
I know.
But no,
the class did not start off well, apparently.
but once I got the right book, I really did enjoy the class, and it was a really great book. So,
okay,
but yeah,
good.
no, it was really
Glad
good.
To hear.
Yeah. So let's diverge away from the professions. Talk about some of your more interesting journeys that you've taken around your life. You've been to a lot of places, and you've shared a lot of stories. And the one that stuck to me was your trip to North Korea.
Yeah.
And you've talked about it in class and with a lot of people. Why go to North Korea? What was so special about it? I mean, obviously, we all know what happens in North Korea.
Yeah, it's not good.
What did you do in North Korea?
So I love to travel, as you've already mentioned. I've been to 48 countries so far. My goal is to always been to more countries than I am years old. So I'm 43 right now. So far, so good. And I was on another trip with a couple of other BVU faculty, and the statistics instructor, Tim McDaniel, he and I really enjoyed adventure travel. So things that kind of are very different from what we're used to. It helps you to get a perspective on your own cultural norms and expectations. And so we were having a conversation over dinner on this trip, and we said, what would be the craziest place in the whole world that we could go? And North Korea was on the top of both of our lists. And we said, there's no way that we could actually go to North Korea.
Right.
Now, keep in mind that this was about 8 years ago when we were having this conversation. So Kim Jong-un had not taken over.
It was Kim Jong-il.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, Kim Jong-il is a crazy person and like a fascist, horrible dictator. But the craziness hadn't been ramped up to the level that it kind of is today.
Okay.
So nobody recently had been put in jail or, anything like that. He wasn't putting out propaganda videos about how he, has unicorns come out of his butt or anything. Right. So we wanted to go there, but we didn't even think it was possible. So we talked about, okay, strategically, how can we get there? And we knew that in Cuba, if you're an American and you want to go to Cuba, you have to get special permission from the government as an educational trip. So if you're a professor, you're allowed to go to Cuba as long as you say this is for an educational purpose and you get approval from a senator, basically. So we said, well, I bet that's our ticket into North Korea. So we started doing research on it. And we found out that there are 2 companies that are approved by the North Korean government to basically vet Americans who want to come into the country. It's difficult, and the number that I can give you is that according to CNN, since the end of the Korean War, only 2,400 Americans have been to North Korea. It's not a lot of people.
No, and you're one of them.
Now it's 24.
Now it's 24, right? Yeah, now you join the ranks of Dennis Rodman. All right.
Well, I was there before Dennis Rodman.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
He was copying me.
Yep.
So That's my claim to fame.
We're calling you out, Dennis Rodman. Watch out, bud.
So we found out that there were these two companies, and in order to get approved to go to North Korea as an American, you have to fit certain criteria, or more importantly, you have to not fit certain criteria. So you can't be in the military, you can't be a reporter, you can't have any Korean ancestry.
Wow.
And you can't, I think you can't be a felon. I think there's a fourth one. I think that's what it is. So what you do is you fill out an application from this company, and you explain who you are and why you want to go, and you swear that you're not in any of those categories. And then you are told you have pending approval. There's one last step. But you should go ahead and plan to come to North Korea, and you need to book your flights. Now, the only way you can get into Pyongyang, which is, I believe, the only airport, the only international airport, so. You have to fly into either Russia or China. So you fly there, and then you meet with a North Korean consulate guy, basically, and he gives you the final approval, which is code for bribe him. So you give him a stack of cash in euros, has to be in euros.
Has to be.
And then he will approve you. But you don't know for sure until you get there. So you have to fly all the way across the world and then meet this guy and give him money and don't piss him off. And then he'll let you in. So once that has occurred, he will give you your visa, which most of the time, if you get a visa, it's like a sticker that you'll put in your passport.
Right.
The North Korean visa is a yellow piece of paper that slides into your passport, and then when you leave, they take it back. So you have no stamp or proof that you've been there. And when you get on the plane, there are only 2 flights into Pyongyang a week.
Wow.
One from Russia and one from China. Yeah. So you get on the plane. When you land, they take your passport and they keep it the whole time you are there. You do not get to have your hands on it.
Ooh, okay.
And that is so that if you are up to any shenanigans, you can't sort of escape with your passport. You have no ID on you, basically.
Right.
I mean, you can have your driver's license. But so you land, they inspect all of your luggage. They had told us you're not allowed to have anything with a GPS device on it, including cell phones.
Right.
So I didn't bring a cell phone. I did have an iPad.
Ooh.
And I didn't know if they were going to let that through because technically it could have GPS.
Right.
But there's not going to be data or wireless available. Nope. So it wouldn't really work. And I had gotten it like as a gift. So I thought, well, if they take it, it's no big loss. So I remember when we landed and they saw the device, they didn't know what it was. They had never seen an iPad before. And they made me turn it on. And at least the guy that I had, I mean, he didn't speak English, but as far as I could tell, he had never seen a touchscreen before, and he didn't understand how the touchscreen works. And I tried to demonstrate, and he got really kind of like angry, and then I think he was sort of embarrassed, so he just let me have it. So I got to keep my iPad the whole time. Wow. So you go through that, and then Tim and I joined this group of about 10 other Americans and Canadians, and we spent the whole week together. So basically, you get on this bus, you have 2 tour guides with you at all times. And the purpose of that, we were told, is so that they can spy on each other. So that one of them can't start saying bad things or ask you, like, can you take me with you when you leave or anything like that.
Wow.
So you have these 2 tour guides. They are very, very strict. They explain the rules to you. You know, don't tear down any banners. They give you a little newspaper that's talking about Kim Jong-il and how he's amazing. And they say, do not get this image dirty. Do not put it on the floor. Do not fold it in half. Those are all crimes against the state.
Whoa.
So right from the very beginning, it's for real.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they then spend the week with you, and I can talk to you about a couple of specific things that we did, but more or less it's the propaganda tour of North Korea.
Right.
So they are only showing you approved things that have been created to impress you. You are not allowed to talk to any citizens. You are not allowed to bring any religious documentation with you. You can't bring a Bible with you. You can't even bring like a necklace that has a cross on it. Nothing like that. and you are not allowed to leave the hotel at night. There are men there with machine guns.
Right. So, I mean, and you're in this country where you know that they do not like Americans. They are like taught from the age of 1 that you do not talk to Americans. They are evil. They are the evil capitalist society. Like, what kind of like thoughts were going through your mind? Like, okay, I'm really in here. What the hell do we do?
Yeah, I mean, it was basically follow the rules and you'll be okay.
Right.
It was things like there are statues and paintings of the Kims everywhere you look.
Right.
And the ones that are particularly important, like a big statue in the middle of the square, you have to get out of the bus. You have to stand in front of it with reverence. You then have to bow. You are allowed to take a picture, but you have to take a picture of the entire statue. You can't take a picture of like just the head or the head and shoulders.
Wow.
You're not allowed to take a picture of just the feet. They said that's very offensive. And you have to do it. You can't say, I'm not going to bow to Kim Jong-un.
You have to.
Because you will go to jail.
Yeah.
So you just have to follow the rules.
Yeah, and I mean, because I've read so much about what North Korea is. You know, I've kept up to date with the Otto Warmbier story the whole way through, and it's such a weird. I don't know how to describe it. I mean, like, you know, because you've been there. I mean, it's just a weird feeling of being there and knowing what goes on, and you can't like go out and do anything about it. Like, you're there and you have to go through what they want you to show you. Like, and it's nothing else of like, they don't go and show you the outside of Pyongyang. You're in Pyongyang. They show you what they want to show you, and that's it.
That's right. They took us for a field trip where we went to a farm. But it was a farm that was basically a propaganda farm.
Right.
So everything is like the weird Disneyland version of North Korea. An example of that is, you know, North Korean people are starving to death.
Yeah.
Since the Korean War, when they split the country in half, when we split the country in half, people in North Korea on average are 8 inches shorter than people in South Korea.
Wow.
Just in a couple of generations because of malnutrition. So people look sickly and younger than they are and short. But we, of course, got tons and tons and tons of food because they wanted to show how prosperous they were. But it's the weird little things that remind you that this is just a bizarre situation. And the specific example of that with the food is they would give us all sorts. It's usually like fish courses, some kimchi, stuff like that. And then the dessert at almost every meal was a bowl of plain steamed white rice. And it was very confusing to us at first. Why this is not a traditional dessert, it's not sweet or anything. And one of the guides explained, we serve rice at the end of the meal to show how prosperous we are, because for years we did not have rice.
Wow, that's interesting. That's weirdly like gracious for them to say that when it's
Yeah.
It's
well,
hard to say.
I mean, they blame us for not having rice.
Yeah, right. You know, man. But then the other thing about that too is I've watched a lot of documentaries, and I can't remember who it was. I think it was the guy was from Vice News or Vice. I think it was from Vice, and he goes into the store and he tries to buy food like simple Doritos, Mountain Dew, but they wouldn't let him because he had a good. And you somehow, someway, you bought a propaganda poster from there?
I did.
Like, what is, like, how did you get it? Because I know, like, with that, it's kind of hard. I know you had euros, so how did you get it?
Yeah, you know, buying souvenirs is tough in North Korea because they don't have stores.
Right.
So the North Korean people themselves, they can't just go to Walmart or the grocery store. They can't go buy clothes. They get ration booklets, and they have to go to the ration outlet basically in their neighborhood and turn in their ration booklets for a blanket or flour or corn or whatever they have. And they might be out of it that week, and you're just SOL basically. You can't get more than your rations. It's illegal, you know, trying to make sure everyone has something. So they don't have stores. So when we were there, the only way that we could buy things were under two circumstances. Several of the locations we went to were clearly for tourists, and they would have like a gift shop, basically. And when we went to the DMZ on the north side, they had a gift shop, and that's where I bought the propaganda posters. These are 3 anti-USA propaganda posters that are based on a collection of stamps that they did, anti-USA stamps. And so the posters are basically blown up images of these 3 stamps. So you could buy them at the gift shops. I was surprised that they had anti-US propaganda posters.
Which is yeah, exactly.
Most of it was, like, they didn't really sell pictures of the Uns because the Kims, because you could deface them or something.
Right.
But it's like a Korean flag or something like that.
Right.
The other weird thing that happened to us was the guide was named Mr. Kim, and he told us we're very, very proud. We have a grocery store. It's the first grocery store in North Korea. Would you like to go? And we're like, well, of course we want to go see that. That sounds fascinating. We were very complimentary to him the whole time. So he took us to this grocery store, and he told us that this is a grocery store for typical North Korean people, that they can go and get their food.
Yeah.
But when we went there, first of all, no one else is in the store except for us.
Right.
And you can only pay in euros. Which is not the currency of North Korea.
Yeah, I don't even know what the currency is. It's
I asked if I could get some North Korean money, and they said no, it's illegal for outsiders to have it.
What? Then how are you supposed to buy?
We had to buy everything in euros.
Alrighty.
So, it's that little thing. I'm sure you learned in your history class with Dixie, the sort of cult of personality that the Kim family has, where they have magical powers, and the first Korean emperor rode a unicorn, and they have a unicorn burial place where the unicorn skeleton is.
Yeah.
And bears cried when Kim Jong-un died, and all this kind of stuff. So they took us to an ancient burial mound of one of the first Korean emperors, who had he had united a lot of the little kingdoms into a bigger region. And so it's it's at the top of this hill where there's this sort of traditional burial mound, and there's a clearing all around it, so you can walk around and pay homage to this. And the trees surrounding the circle all leaning in. And they said this is because he is so powerful that even the trees bow down to him. But when I surreptitiously went over to the trees when Mr. Kim wasn't eyeballing me, you can see chainsaw marks where they have chainsawed the trees to lean toward the grave.
No way.
That's the kind of stuff where I'm like,
that's crazy.
You guys, I can't tell if you really believe this or because you are pretending to believe this, because if you don't believe this, you'll go to jail.
Yeah.
It was very strange.
Very strange. I mean, and nowadays I believe that North Americans cannot go to North Korea because of what happened with Audie Warmbier, which thank goodness, because what happened to him was disgusting, and we don't know the whole details, which is even more scary. But yeah, I mean, weird. It's like a very strange nuclear wasteland Disneyland, essentially.
Yeah,
it's just really strange. So I want to get to your last story that you kind of had, and apparently you camped out on the Great Wall of China.
I did indeed.
How did you even get to the Great Wall of China, and why camp out there? I'm so curious.
So I've been to China now. Maybe eight times.
Oh, wow.
All through BVU trips. So I'm very fortunate to have been able to travel as much as I have through BVU. In this particular trip, this is the last time I was in China, actually. The original plan for North Korea was that we would take students there. So Tim and I went on our own to do scouting to make sure we felt comfortable and safe with the itinerary. And then we were going to take students the following year over spring break. Well, the day before we were going to leave, Kim Jong-un put out a propaganda video saying he was going to take any Americans who came into Pyongyang prisoner. So, of course, the university lawyer calls us up and says, you can't take a bunch of BV students to Pyongyang when they're going to be taken prisoner. It was heartbreaking for everyone because we had been planning this for a year. It was really bad.
Yeah.
So we met with the students. This is the day before we were supposed to leave. These students had all paid like $4,500 to go on this trip.
Right.
And we said, listen, we can't take you. It's just not safe. So we'll give you the choice. You can get your money back. And we had already paid it to North Korea. So this was just going to be BVU just shelling out
oh my
like
gosh.
$45,000. So if you want your money back, we made you this promise. We can't keep it. We'll give you your money back.
Yup.
Or we have round trip tickets to Beijing because you have to go there first and bribe the guy.
Right.
Let's go to China. BV gave us a credit card and said, do whatever you want. So we had this credit card with a huge balance on it. And we had trips to China anyway. We had the flights booked. And we said, listen, I can't tell you what the itinerary is. I can't tell you what we're going to do. Who wants to go on an adventure to China?
What?
And 10 of the students out of 12 said, let's go to China.
Really?
And the 2 who didn't actually had both already been to China before.
Oh, so they're just like, oh, well.
So they would rather have their money back. So we get on this airplane going to Beijing, and we don't even know where we're staying that night.
So you're on a plane. It's like, we're going to China, but we might sleep on the street, one baby, who knows?
Yeah, pretty much. We knew we were staying the very first night because we had booked that hotel anyway because the flight out to Pyongyang was the next day. So we get there. It was like the Holiday Inn Beijing or something. So we stay there. It's, very boring and, what we would consider pretty typical.
Yep.
Okay, so then the next day, the Great Wall of China is long.
Yeah.
And it's got a lot of pieces to it. The part that you can go to as a tourist is, to be honest, kind of fake. It's where the original wall was, and it's built on the original foundation, but the stones that you're actually seeing and walking on are all recent builds. So it's sort of like safe for tourists. It has like ramps and, it's OSHA approved Great Wall of China, right? So we knew we were going there anyway. So we get to the Great Wall of China, and the students are walking around this, very beautiful fake Great Wall of China. And the guide says, give me an hour. I'm going to try to figure out where you're staying tonight and what we'll do tomorrow. Okay, great. So an hour goes by, and then Tim and I meet up with the guide, and he says, well, for your hotel tonight or for where you're going to stay, I've got 2 options. We can either just go back to the Holiday Inn where you were last night, or if you'd like, we can camp on top of the Great Wall of China. And Tim and I look at each other like, did we just understand what you said? That's not a thing. People don't just camp on top of the Great Wall. I've never heard of that.
Right.
And I've read a lot of travel stories and
a
lot of people who go to China, no one says, oh yeah, I camped on top of the Great Wall of China. So Tim and I immediately go, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we are going to do that. We came here for an adventure.
We're going on an adventure.
We're going to do it.
Yep.
We didn't honestly really think out the consequences of this decision.
Yeah, you just kind of like, all right, let's go.
Yeah, sounds good. So he says, okay, great. Give me a couple hours to make the arrangements and then we'll head out. So now it's around like 6 o'clock and the guide comes back and we all gather up and he says, okay, get in this van. Okay.
Wow.
So we get in this like unmarked white van and we drive for maybe another hour out into the countryside. Now, this is like seriously rural China. There is not a lot of electricity.
Yeah.
The roads aren't paved. We're driving up toward the mountains. And we get to this little village that I would guess has maybe 300 people in it. There's some sort of egg factory on the side of one of the hills where they've got a bunch of chickens and they've got some sort of basket pulley system for the eggs. I'm thinking that's where this town gets its money. I don't really know. And the van drops us off at this farmhouse, and the guy who lives there, his name is Mr. Who, which I remember because of the old Who's on First. So Mr. Who comes out and greets us, and he doesn't speak any English, but he's, his words are being translated for us by the guide, and Mr. Who says, come on in, I've prepared dinner for you. Fantastic. So we get into Mr. Who's house, and he has prepared our dinner, which is goat on a stick with Nutella.
Oh.
Which I had never put those 2 flavors together before.
Well, I didn't even think they would have Nutella in China. That's interesting.
Nutella is very popular.
I guess so.
So we eat our goat and Nutella bobs, and Mr. Who is talking to the guide, and finally the guide says, Mr. Who would like to ask you if you really want to do this, because Mr. Who would like to remind you that it's going to be about 20 degrees Fahrenheit tonight.
Ooh.
And there's no heat. And we all are like, well, we came this far,
Yeah, you might as well.
So Mr. Who, through the translator, says, I have some guest rooms. I think you should think about this a little bit more. And we're all like, no, we're going to totally do it. And so then Mr. Hu, again, through the translator, says, okay, put on all of the clothes that you brought.
Oh.
So we're wearing like our 3 pairs of socks. We're only
Yeah.
supposed to be there for 8 days, right? 2 pairs of pants, a couple sweatshirts, our coats. And Mr. Hu's like, all right, let's go. So Mr. Hu gets this like backpack thing where he has strapped 12 like dollar store tents and sleeping bags on the back of his backpack. And we all get back in the van and we drive back up even more because the wall is basically at the highest elevation so that they can see people coming, right? So we're now in the mountains with no electricity, no heat.
Oh my gosh.
And Tim and I are sort of starting to piece this together, like, what are we getting into here? So we get out of the van. The guide is still with us so he can translate. And we're now at the base of the Great Wall, okay? It had snowed and iced that day.
Oh, no.
So everything is covered in snow and ice, and it's cold. There are no lights. We can't really see very well. And I'm now at the base looking around for ladder, steps. No.
What?
We see Mr. Hu proceed to Spider-Man up the side of the Great Wall of China.
What?
And I'm looking at Tim like, are we supposed to Spider-Man right now?
I mean...
While processing the fact that the Great Wall of China was built to be not scalable.
Right. Yeah.
Now, fortunately, I guess for us, this is like the legitimate, like 2,000-year-old Great Wall of China, which is crumbling and falling apart and not really even. So we've got footholds, which we proceed to use as we climb up the Great Wall of China. People don't believe me when I tell them this story. I have pictures of this. So we climb up the side of the wall. And Mr. Hu, who's like a pro, he's been up there for like half an hour by the time we get up there. He's already got some of the tents set up. And I'm looking at these tents. These are like, seriously, like dollar store quality tents.
Oh my God.
With a sleeping bag, no foam pad.
Ooh.
And we're sleeping on stone.
Yeah.
Covered in snow and ice. It's going to absorb all that cold. And we're sleeping on it.
Oh no.
And so Mr. Hu finishes getting everything ready, and he and the guide are like, see ya, good luck, and they hop off the side of the wall.
What? They just leave?
Yes.
So they left 10 students and 2 professors on the Great Wall of China unattained in the middle of winter.
Yes, that is what happened.
Oh my gosh.
So luckily, Tim and I are talking to each other saying, thank goodness nobody like slipped and broke a leg or even cut themselves because there's not a doctor out here. We didn't bring a first aid kit. Like, this is really a poor choice on our behalf. It's very irresponsible.
So you get to the Great Wall of China and we're like, I don't think this is a good idea.
Right. Too late now. So we're all standing there. We're starting to get cold.
Yeah.
We're kind of like laughing and the adrenaline is heating up. While the sweat is starting to cool off, right? Because we were all sweaty climbing up the side. And so that's going to make us even colder. So finally, one of the students goes, I'm getting in my tent for the heat, basically. So it was 2 people to a tent. And I don't know if they cuddled or what happened, but we all get in the tents and we're basically just shivering and we're kind of like talking to each other and singing songs and, swapping stories to keep the morale up as it's proceeding to get very, very cold.
Yeah.
So finally, I managed to fall asleep. And I wake up and I think it's got to be like 7 a.m. at this point. Because we went to sleep like at 9:30 or something because we were cold and it was dark and there was nothing else to do.
Right.
And I had one of those watches where if you push the button, it'll light up and tell you what time it is. So I pushed my button thinking like, okay, it's got to be 7 o'clock, time to get up. And it was like 2:30 in the morning.
What?
So I'm thinking, oh, man. Like, not even close to halfway through this thing. So I try to fall back asleep. I'm cold. And I realize I need to go to the bathroom.
Oh, no. Where do you go to the bathroom in the Great Wall of China? Do you just go on the wall? Oh, no.
And I now realize Mr. Hu did not point out the facilities. There isn't even like a bucket with a lid.
It's just the Great Wall. You're just
So I try to fall back asleep, right? Like,
right.
How badly do I really need to go?
Uh-huh.
Apparently badly enough that I could not fall back asleep. So finally, I get out of the sleeping bag. I get out of the tent. It's totally dark. I don't want to be in proximity of the students to see this whole situation. So I sort of like wander down. It's, it's sort of hilly. So I sort of go down a hill. And now I'm trying to think about like the physics of the situation. Like, do I try to like lean off the side?
What do you do?
What if I slip on the ice and I fall?
Oh no.
No one will find me?
Yeah, right?
So I'm sitting there for like probably 5 minutes thinking, what do I do?
Yeah.
So finally, I pooped on the Great Wall of China.
You just...
My frozen poop is now on the Great Wall of China.
I mean, you talk about there's footprints on the moon, there's a rover on Mars, and there's a frozen chocolate bar on the Great Wall of China by yours truly.
I mean, I'm not really proud of it.
Something.
But it happened.
I can't get over that. There is a deuce by Dr. Goodfriend on the Great Wall of China.
Yeah.
I mean, you. I don't know what to say to that. I really don't. I mean, like I said, you talk about some of the greatest pictures in U.S. history. There's a footprint on the moon. There's a flag on the moon. But now there's that on the Great Wall of China.
Yeah, I have
Beautiful.
not continued the pattern with any other great wonders of the
sure
world.
Hope not.
Just in case your listeners are curious about that.
I sure hope not.
It's not like a bucket list for me now.
Where can I go to the bathroom next?
Right.
Like
Great pyramids.
Let's go.
So it's just the one time.
Just the one time, but like Mr. What was his name again?
Mr. Who?
Mr. Who. He's not like the bathrooms are down here a mile. No, it's just like good luck.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
Yeah. So the end of the story is just that the next day, it's easier to get down basically because the guide fortunately walked us up about half an hour along the wall to a place where the hill was closer to the top. So it was less space to go down, basically. Right. So we're walking back to the van, and Tim and I asked the guide, we've never heard of this. How many people do this? And he says, well, mostly people do it in the summer. Uh-huh. Could have mentioned that before. And then he also says, and technically it's illegal. You're not really supposed to do that because they're concerned about damage to the Great Wall.
Right.
So on the paperwork, I'd appreciate it if you don't mention that it just says you slept at Mr. Who's farm.
Yeah.
And so we figure out that basically the guide and Mr. Who split the cash that would have gone to the Holiday Inn in this sort of Great Wall scheme.
Really?
And that's why it's not more well known.
Yeah.
Which we did not know any of that in advance. So we have plausible deniability. But to be fair, we could have asked some more questions.
Yeah. Is this legal? Are we going to get in trouble? Should we even do this?
Right.
Tim, what are we doing? Oh my God.
Right.
Oh, wow. That, I think that's got to be probably one of the, you talk about North Korea, but that's that's pretty good. So I think we've talked long enough about those two stories. Very awesome stories. I want to wrap this up with one last question that kind of surmises your time here at BV and just all of your experiences put together, even through your bachelor's degree, even to you teaching here. What does being a BVU Beaver mean to you? And it's a very loaded question. I know that.
Wow. To me, being part of BV means being part of a family. I feel like at our best, we're really a family who cares about education, not just for education's sake, but for the good that education can do to the world. So our motto is education for service. And I really believe that when we shine, we are showing something that we learned through being at this university that we wouldn't have learned had we not gone to any other university or university at all. but that we're not using that just to promote ourselves. We're using that to try to make the world a better place in some small way. And I know that that's kind of cliche, but I think that that's what really makes us proud.
Yeah, no, that feels it. And hey, maybe if you're lucky enough, you can go to Great Wall of China, and you can leave your mark on it too. Who knows? But Dr. Goodfriend, it's been amazing talking to you and all of your crazy adventures. Hopefully next time we can have you on again and we can talk about some more of your crazy adventures that you've had. So thank you for being on.
Thank you so much.
And next time on the podcast, we'll have our next guest. I'm not exactly sure who it is, but we're kind of just rolling with it. So thank you all so much for listening to the Beaver Train Podcast. This has been episode 2, Dr. Gwen Goodfriend. And until next time, we'll talk to you later on the Beaver Train Podcast. Have a good day. We'll talk to you later.